Who's the target? Russia accused of striking U.S.-backed Syrian rebels along with ISIS positions. Pro-life momentum. How does the Pope's every life is sacred stance during his U.S. trip translate into political strategy? Bracing for the storm. The East Coast likely to be drenched by Atlantic Hurricane Joaquin. And saintly couple, the parents of the little flower to be canonized this month. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, October 1st, 2015. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. At least 7 people are dead, 20 injured in a shooting at a southwestern Oregon community college. The gunman, a 20-year-old male, was killed in an exchange of gunfire with officers. The shooting happened in a classroom on campus in Roseburg, about 180 miles south of Portland. A fire marshal on the scene says it was difficult to secure the campus because of its size.
There are probably 18 buildings on campus, and probably 15 of those buildings have 6 to 8 classrooms, but the campus itself is fairly spread out. The shooter stayed in one of those immediate double classroom areas.
The rural town of Roseburg is just west of the Cascade Mountains. Russian jets carry out a second day of airstrikes in Syria. But are they targeting Islamic State militants or shoring up President Bashar Assad? Wyatt Goolsby reports from the White House.
Brian, Russian President Vladimir Putin is calling these preemptive strikes against militants. He also denies reports that civilians have been killed. Both the Pentagon and the White House say they are in talks with Russia about making sure there's no military conflict between American and Russian forces in Syria. On the second day of raids, the Russian military releases a video allegedly showing warplanes hitting 4 ISIS facilities in the west and northwest part of Syria. There are conflicting reports about whether innocent civilians have been killed in the airstrikes. Moscow insists the bombs are targeting the Islamic State, but Senator John McCain isn't buying that. He says Russia is also targeting U.S.-backed rebels who oppose the Syrian government.
I can absolutely confirm to you that they were strikes against our Free Syrian Army or groups that have been armed and trained by the CIA, because we have communications with people there.
For years, the U.S. has backed the Free Syrian Army and other rebel groups in a civil war opposing this man, President Bashar al-Assad. Assad has been implicated in war crimes and crimes against humanity on his own citizens by the United Nations. While the U.S. wants him out, Russia wants to keep him in. Today, British Prime Minister David Cameron said if Russia is only targeting ISIS, then their help is welcomed.
If, on the other hand, this is action against the Free Syrian Army and in defense of Assad, the dictator, then obviously that is a retrograde step. But let's see exactly what's happened.
The Russian foreign minister says his country has the same goal as the U.S., to eliminate terrorists in Syria. The Russian foreign minister also says ISIS is not the only target in Syria. He cites at least 2 other groups they identify as terrorists. The White House says if Russia is targeting other groups aside from ISIS, it will only hurt the prospects of peace. Brian?
Thank you. Wyatt Goolsby at the White House. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Catholics and all Americans are still digesting the first ever speech by a pope to the U.S. Congress. A week after that historic address, Jason Calvi has more tonight from Capitol Hill.
Brian, the Holy Father's message echoed around these chambers and around the world. He touched upon a lot of issues, including immigration, the environment, poverty, and peace. But he also touched upon the sanctity of life and the truth about marriage. Catholic politicians were listening closely.
The Golden Rule also reminds us of our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of its development.
The Holy Father addressing life and marriage in a historic speech to the United States Congress.
Fundamental relations have been called into question.
Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum says the Pope's tone is attracting new listeners.
I see this as Francis opening up a door and welcoming people in, finding a touchstone that they can relate to, and then exposing that audience to the greater truth. to how all of these truths weave together into a whole.
Santorum says it's part of evangelization.
The first part of evangelization is a discussion, is a curiosity. And I think what Pope Francis has done is created the curiosity. And that's a beautiful thing.
Kansas Governor Sam Brownback says it's a strategy that's working.
I think he's really trying to broaden the dialogue and get more people to listen, and he's getting more people to listen, but he hasn't changed on what these core issues are.
The Pope says it's his duty to build bridges and to help others do the same. And that could be the context for understanding the Pope's address right here at the Capitol last week. It's often his actions that speak even more powerfully than his words. Right after speaking to the powerful here, he visited the poor at Catholic Charities. Brian?
Thank you, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill tonight. Hurricane Joaquin continues to strengthen as it batters parts of the Bahamas. It's now a Category 4 storm, the winds approaching 140 miles an hour. Forecasters say it could follow a path bringing near the U.S. East Coast. The center says it is too early to tell if Joaquin will make landfall here. People living along the East Coast are warned to watch that storm closely. The federal trial of the man accused of shooting 9 people at a Charleston church earlier this year is delayed. Jury selection in the case of Dylan Roof was to start next month. The judge has agreed to push the trial to at least January, giving both sides more preparation time. Roof faces dozens of federal charges, including hate crimes. He is white. All the victims were black. His attorneys say he wants to plead guilty, but needs to know first if the government will seek the death penalty. An Oklahoma death row inmate gets an 11th hour reprieve. Richard Glossop was just minutes away from execution. Prison officials say one of the 3 drugs needed to carry out the lethal injection was the wrong drug. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals and the U.S. Supreme Court both rejected Glossop's appeal for a stay of execution. He is now set to die on November 6th. The owners of a Portland area bakery refused to pay a $135,000 fine, damages to a same-sex couple who were refused service. The owners cited their religious beliefs for not baking that couple a wedding cake. The state labor commissioner awarded the damages in July for emotional suffering. The Oregonian reports that the bakery owners have filed an appeal of that ruling. Tonight, we can show you some of the gifts that Pope Francis gave to Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis and her husband. The Holy Father met with the couples last week in Washington and gave them these 2 rosaries. Davis, a Christian, gave the rosaries to her parents, who are Catholic. Her lawyer says Francis asked for prayers and told Davis to stay strong. The county clerk says the private meeting validates her refusal to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Dr. Ryan Anderson with the Heritage Foundation, author of Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom. Do you agree with the Pope's assertion that conscientious objection is a human right?
Sure. I mean, properly understood, we have a long history in the United States in particular of honoring conscientious objectors, whether the people who couldn't serve in the military, they were accommodated with the draft, but also government employees. One of the follow-up questions to the Pope was, does it apply to government employees? And he goes, if the employees are human beings, they have human rights. And we've done this with postal workers who couldn't do draft cards, IRS workers who couldn't process nonprofit applications, and hopefully for Miss Davis herself.
This meeting was kept under the radar, but it now out there. He told Kim Davis to stay strong. Does that mean that he's in her corner?
Well, I mean, who knows how much he knows about all of the particularities of her legal situation. I think clearly between the visit to the Little Sisters of the Poor and the visit with Kim Davis, he's trying to encourage Americans to work together to find common sense compromise outcomes. Every legally eligible couple needs to be able to receive a marriage license, but do we have to force every clerk to issue the license? You know, everyone now has a constitutional right to receive certain health care benefits, but do we have to force the nuns to be the ones that provide these health care benefits? It strikes me that he's saying, why don't you work together to find a way where both sides can win, where Kim Davis can keep her conscience, the Little Sisters of the Poor can keep their conscience, but someone else can provide the marriage license, or in this case, the abortion-causing drugs and devices.
In fact, Ms. Davis is suing the governor of Kentucky for violating her religious freedom. She's an elected official. Do you think she has a case?
Well, we'll see. She wouldn't have a case under the Civil Rights Act of '64. It protects government employees, but not elected government employees. But the Kentucky state RFRA seems to apply even to elected officials. Kentucky law has an opt-out for animal rights vegetarians from doing hunting license. She's saying, why can't we have a similar opt-out for someone like me who believes marriage is the union of a man and a woman? The Kentucky marriage license originally said bride and groom. It was then changed to say party one and party two to accommodate same-sex couples. She's saying, why can't you accommodate people who believe marriage is the union of a man and a woman so we don't have to issue the license, have our name on it, have it go out under our authority as county clerk?
Do you think this could go all the way to the Supreme Court?
It's certainly possible. Hopefully it won't, though. I mean, hopefully kind of cooler heads will prevail in Kentucky, and the political leaders will say, look, we can compromise to find a win-win solution in which no one has to violate their beliefs and no one will be turned away who's legally eligible for the license.
Truth Overruled: The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom, your book. Dr. Ryan Anderson with the Heritage Foundation. We appreciate you. Thanks for being with us. Pope Francis says we find our true identity only in God. During his homily at this morning's Mass, the Holy Father focused on the need to cultivate a deep yearning for God in the Christian life. He asks if we have the desire to move forward each day. He prays that our heart's longing for God never be extinguished. Coming up, more Clinton emails released as GOP candidates warn against the U.S. accepting refugees from Syria. And we remember the first U.S. visit of Pope St. John Paul II that began 36 years ago today. Our life is not a pointless wandering. We have a sure goal, the house of the Father. A tweet from Pope Francis today. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Hackers linked to Russia tried at least 5 times to gain access to Hillary Clinton's private email account while she was Secretary of State. This is just one development we're learning from the latest State Department email release. Catherine Zeltner is here with more.
Brian, it's not clear if Clinton was fooled into opening any attachments to expose her account, but it highlights the risk of Clinton's unsecure email being pried open by foreign intelligence agencies. The hacking attempts were included in the 6,300 pages just released by the State Department.
This raises concerns about her using a private server in her house. There have been questions that have been raised about how secure that system was.
More questions raised with the latest email release, but also answers about how the State Department operated under Clinton. It's clear she was not happy with one department decision. In 2011, the department announced passport applicants could use gender-neutral language.
All set?
Clinton writes, who made the decision that state will not use the terms mother and father and instead substitute parent 1 and 2? I'm not defending that decision. Other emails reveal how Hillary's camp wants to frame the pro-choice debate. Messages praise one Salon magazine journalist who writes this about abortion. There are lives at stake, the lives and the moral value not of the unborn, but of the living, breathing women of the nation. The State Department will make 4 more email dumps at the end of October, November, December, and January. It's a drip method Republicans hope to destroy Clinton's campaign for the presidency. Meanwhile, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy is under fire for his comments on Hillary's run during an interview yesterday. The man posed to be the next Speaker of the House suggested the Benghazi investigation was started to take Hillary down. More troubling news for the Clinton campaign. While it raised more than $28 million this quarter, her opponent Bernie Sanders is close behind, raising $25 million. Brian?
All right, Catherine Zeltner, thank you. And other political news, Donald Trump issues a warning about refugees fleeing the civil war in Syria wanting to come to the United States.
You have the migration because Syria is such a disaster. And now I hear we want to take in 200,000 Syrians, right? And they could be, listen, they could be ISIS. I don't know. Did you ever see a migration like that?
Another GOP presidential candidate weighs in on this same issue.
Unless we have a way of making sure that they're not infiltrated by jihadists or likely to become radicalized, they should not be coming here. What I have said repeatedly is that we should be concentrating on getting them settled in that area, in the Arabian Peninsula, in Turkey.
The U.S. is committed to accepting about 10,000 more Syrian refugees in the next fiscal year, even more after that. Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi gets defensive today at her weekly news conference. She was asked about allegations that Planned Parenthood harvests baby organs for profit.
I am a devout, practicing Catholic, a mother of 5 children. When my baby was born, my 5th child, my oldest child, was 6 years old. I think I know more about this subject than you, with all due respect. And I do not intend to respond to your questions.
The Center for Responsive Politics says Planned Parenthood contributed more than $585,000 to Democrats running for federal office in 2014, including Pelosi. While visiting the U.S., Pope Francis spoke specifically to women religious.
Quisiera, de modo especial, expresar mi admiración.
At a prayer service in New York's St. Patrick's Cathedral, he asked, what would the church be without women religious? The Holy Father said these women are on the front lines of spreading the gospel and told them he loves them very much. Anna Cristina Villa joins us from Rome tonight. Anna, tell us about your role in the Pontifical Council for the Laity.
I have been working for 6 years now as head of the women's section of the Pontifical Council for the Laity. This is an office dedicated to reflect within the Holy See on the vocation and mission of women in the church, but also in the wider society.
Pope Francis has talked about theology of women. What do you think he means?
Well, I think his constant invitation to a theology of women is inviting us to move forward from the great contributions of former popes, of Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict, especially linking very much this theology, this femininity, the femininity with the femininity of the church. You know that in Latin languages the church is always called la Chiesa or la Iglesia, and that invites him to think of the very important and central role that women have in the church, because if the church is feminine, then women express the church's reach out to people, the church's mercy, the church's love and compassion and teaching service in a very deep and important way. And I think that is what he's inviting us to think on more deeply, and also to make more visible, more participated in the different areas where the church is. I think also he's inviting us to go beyond the conception of the church that is also only limited to the clerics, who are very important because our church is hierarchical, but the church is all the baptized. And so every person that belongs to Jesus Christ through baptism and reaches out to others is the church reaching out to others in the world.
And women have been guiding the church for centuries, going all the way back to our Blessed Mother, who was with the apostles when the Holy Spirit descended, to St. Therese, whose feast we celebrate today, a young woman and a doctor of the church.
I know we have these treasures of the women doctors of the church, like St. Therese, as you said, who have really given a treasure of doctrine and of wisdom to the church that is also very feminine. No, is that deep doctrine, good for all faithful, but also given in a very feminine way. So that is the beauty of these doctors that we have.
Anna Cristina Villa, thank you so much for joining us from Rome tonight.
Thank you.
And a bit of papal history on this Thursday, October 1st. On this day in 1979, Pope John Paul II began his first pastoral visit to the United States. He was the first pope to visit the White House, where he was greeted by President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind. He also visited Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago, home to the largest Polish community outside Poland. Up next, professional Catholic women affirm essential and sometimes controversial church teaching. And on her feast day, we anticipate the canonization of St. Therese's parents in a few weeks. Today, the 1st of October, the feast of the Little Flower of Jesus. St. Therese of Lisieux, a doctor of the church, a Carmelite nun. She was only 24 when she died. Thanks for joining us this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. 200 Catholic professional women affirm their support of church teaching on the human person, sexuality, marriage, and the family. This coming ahead of this month's Synod of Bishops on the Family in Rome. They state in the letter, coordinated by the Catholic Women's Forum, we see the teachings of the church as truth, a source of authentic freedom, equality, and happiness for women. The letter goes on to say, we believe that women should be prominent messengers of the truths contained in the church's teachings. Mary Rice Hassett is director of the Catholic Women's Forum at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Why write this letter now? Why is it needed?
Two reasons, Brian. That's a great question. One is we're approaching the Synod, and so the context for our letter was really to send a message of prayer, support, love for the Holy Father and for the bishops, and to encourage them too. I think there's the second, and this is where the second reason comes in. There's so much that the media covers about Catholic women feeling oppressed or wanting to change the teachings. And we felt it was important for Catholic women who do support the Church's teachings, and there are a lot of us, to come out and to say that, and to say we see these teachings not only as true, but as something that contributes to women's flourishing. The Church has got it right.
We saw a couple of excerpts from that letter, but what is the overall message here?
The overall message is really this, that the Church's teachings point to a better way of life for women and for their families. And so the challenge is to live them well and to help families and to help women to see that truth and to live it well. It's not to change those teachings. And so we wanted to encourage the bishops and laity everywhere that we see that. And in our own experiences, we've seen the wreckage of the sexual revolution, and when these teachings are not lived well. So our experience tells us that the poor and the vulnerable suffer especially when these teachings aren't lived.
And Pope Francis has really focused on the universal church, a much broader church than we might realize here in the United States. Your letter expresses solidarity with women in developing countries. Why and how do you do that?
Well, we wanted the bishops to know that we're very much aware of the different challenges that women face in different societies, and particularly the women in the developing world. And this is something that Pope Francis has highlighted, that development funds, things that would go towards women's education, for example, things like that are being conditioned on those countries accepting ways of life and ideas that are destructive to the family. So we wanted to acknowledge that and to say we're standing with you and we'll support you in prayer, but in any other way that we can.
Mary Rice Hassan, thank you for breaking that letter down for us.
Thanks.
Well, one of the most beloved saints of all time is celebrated today, the little flower of Jesus, St. Therese of Lisieux. On the 18th of this month, her parents will also be elevated to sainthood. It is the first time a married couple is canonized together.
Oh my. She's great.
Still impressed after nearly 70 years as a Carmelite, Father Kieran Kavanaugh publishes books on mystics of his order, including St. Therese.
He's a genius.
This is a copy of Therese's handwritten autobiography. In it, she writes, "You can hardly imagine how much I loved my father and mother. Zélie and Louis Martin had 9 children. 4 died as infants.
Zélie loved having children.
The other 5 joined the convent. Louis was a watchmaker. He read to the girls at night and liked poetry, biographies, and history.
So he'd take Therese fishing, and while he fished, she didn't fish, but she sat on the lawn there, or the great meadow, and looked at the flowers in the heaven and everything, kind of contemplated nature.
Mother Zélie ran a lace business.
Zélie worked so hard. She was such a hard worker, and she had a strong faith.
She died of breast cancer when St. Therese was only 4. Many years later, Therese would write, "The touching ceremony of extreme unction made a deep impression on me. I can still see the place where I knelt and hear my poor father's sobs."
She was very sensitive and cried very easily. And this was probably from the shock of her mother's death, to whom she was so attached at that early age.
And the saintly couple could be patrons for many.
The realization that all are called to sanctity, and that married life is a vocation from God, and that bearing children for God, this is his way of producing, and then having a good holy family.
St. Therese of Lisieux, pray for us. We want to thank especially the Franciscan missionaries of the Eternal Word, Father Patrick, who blessed Guadalupe Radio Studios and will offer Mass for our team right after the show. We thank Father and all of the Franciscan missionaries of the Eternal Word. It's been an incredible couple of weeks for the EWTN News Nightly team. I am Brian Patrick. We invite you to join us tomorrow night. We're going to flash back through the entire 10-day apostolic journey of Pope Francis, first to Cuba, then the United States. Until then, good night. May God bless you.